My name is Alex Johnson. I work at Transparency International EU. We are the EU office of the worldwide movement against corruption. We don't believe that corruption is cultural at Transparency International because that both takes away the responsibility of people to change their system, to change their politics, to change their way of doing business, and it also has these kind of slightly racist undertones from this kind of colonial European way of thinking. You know, oh, Africa will always be corrupt because it's Africa. That's not the right way of thinking about it. You know, you got to think about corruption as in something you can change. It may be common in some countries to pay a bribe. You've got to have the people behind fighting corruption and the state as well, the structure to stop it from happening. And of course, corruption is such a massive issue in Ukraine that there has to be a well thought out, well built strategy and plan between the EU and the Ukraine. How it will play out we don't know, because it obviously depends on things on the ground, but what's required is change inside the country, of course, and the right kind of pressure from Brussels. You've got to have the right amount of carrot and stick. Sorry, the visa liberalization agreement that had some conditionalities attached to it. One of the conditionalities was that Ukraine has to get this e-declaration system online, and the e-declaration system is basically where politicians and all public officials are supposed to put all their assets and information online, how much they earn, what they own, this kind of stuff. However, the Libe Committee, that's the Civil Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs Committee in the European Parliament, has just agreed to discuss a report, to debate a report, which will be this month in October, on whether or not to grant this visa-free travel to Ukraine. And that's in spite of the fact that they pushed this e-declaration system back time and time again. It was supposed to be launched on August 15th. So, you know, the EU, it can push, but it's still, for political reasons, allowing you know, things to continue a little bit in that sense. Well, for a start, this e-procurement system has to go ahead. That's really important. These trainings and stuff that are being run by Danish and people need to be done well, they need to be effective, but a lot of this is already happening. We don't want to focus too much on like the EU coming in and saving kind of thing. Ukraine has an incredibly strong civil society, and they are really working hard. Our chapter there, Transparency International Ukraine, are working very hard to train people on how to use this new e-declaration, e-procurement system as well. So a lot of it is also coming from civil society, and that must be supported. Also, the EU needs to keep up pressure on the old regime. It needs to make sure that it keeps sanctions on Yanukovych and his allies that amassed all this wealth and stole so much from the state. Because unless you make it not okay, you know, unless you say you can't get away with this, it'll happen again.